Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. I think we're closer now than we have ever been. Now, that was U.S. President Donald Trump speaking after his team took part in peace talks on Ukraine in Berlin this week. Now, in recent days, diplomatic efforts have intensified, with European leaders discussing security guarantees, reparations, and accountability for war crimes, while President Volodymyr Zelenskyy continues a series of high-level visits across Europe. Now, to help us assess where these talks stand and what they may realistically deliver, we're joined now by Rostyslav Khotin, senior editor with RFE/RL's Ukraine service. Good to have you back on TVP World. So let's begin with this momentum. How do you sense that from the Ukrainian side? There's convergence, apparently. That's what we're hearing, the strong convergence on the U.S. side and the Europeans and the Ukrainians. There's going to be talks in Florida, apparently, this weekend. What do you expect there to happen?
Yeah, there was a convergence between positions of Ukrainian, European, and what is more important, American negotiators, especially in Berlin, during Berlin meetings. Now there is a kind of talk about how to make sure that after peace is reached in this current war and the Russian aggression will stop, how to make sure that Russia would not return to aggression again, would not invade Ukraine again in the future, how to prevent this. So there are a lot of talks about security guarantees for Ukraine, and the Europeans have the list of proposals. For instance, they see, as Ukrainians see it, the biggest number one guarantee, security guarantee for Ukraine is a strong, well-paid, well-armed Ukrainian armed forces, Ukrainian army. And this army should have 800,000 uniformed men. It's a good number for Ukrainians. Now there is 1 million plus fighting against Russian invasion, but 800,000 for peaceful time is a good number. By the way, just to compare, at the initial stage of the war, during talks in Turkey in 2022, Russia insisted on Ukrainian army of 40-50,000, just 40-50,000. Now 800,000 is a good number. Also, for comparison, German army is 180,000 uniformed men, Polish army 200,000. But for Ukraine to have an army of 800,000 is a good number. Again, one more security guarantee, the presence of Western troops on Ukrainian soil. They will be based in Western Ukraine, not on the front lines, in Western Ukraine. And Westerners also will patrol Ukrainian sea, Black Sea, and also Ukrainian airspace, which is good sign. Also, probably Americans will come up with satellite intelligence information and ordinary intelligence information for Ukrainians, and also monitoring on ceasefire. There will be serious monitoring of ceasefire, whether Russia keeps its word and do not violate ceasefire. Also, they talk about as a security guarantee post-war reconstruction of Ukraine, and also using the frozen Russian assets in the West to make sure that Ukraine is rebuilt, is a sovereign, prosperous state in the future. And last but not least, among the top security guarantees for Ukraine will be quick membership in the European Union. Because NATO is not realistic, there is no, NATO membership is not on agenda now, it's not on the table, but Ukraine needs to be anchored in at least one serious Western structure, Western institution, and this is European Union. There were talks, rumors that Americans even want Ukraine to join in 2027. I think it's not realistic, because Europeans, they have in the European Union, they have procedures, Ukraine should meet criteria, but by 2030, as a date of Ukraine of entering the European Union, joining the European Union, is realistic. So EU membership is a serious security guarantee for Ukraine in the future.
Mm-hmm. So there's many layers to this. I'm wondering how much of that will come across the line on the weekend. That's what we're hearing, right? This is going to be discussed apparently in Florida with Witkoff with the United States, and Ukrainian officials will have more there. Interesting point as well. You mentioned the frozen Russian assets. I mean, this is a big story. This will be brought up some kind of way for that European Council summit, all those EU leaders coming together in Brussels on Thursday and Friday. On that same note, let's stay in the Benelux region for a minute. If we're looking at what just happened in The Hague yesterday about the signing of the International Claims Commission in The Hague, explain to me, or our audience rather, the significance of that, because I think that also, in your mind, does this also add pressure, let's say a legal or moral pressure, on getting access to those frozen Russian assets? Because they're also linked there, aren't they?
Yeah, there was the special compensation commission was set up, led by the Council of Europe, and it's one of three bodies which will be there. One is this compensation commission, one is a special prosecutor office, which will prosecute for war crimes and damage inflicted on Ukraine by Russian aggression and war crimes. And also there is a special bureau which collect information from Ukrainians, ordinary Ukrainians, and power structures of Ukrainian authorities, government, local authorities, ordinary Ukrainians, businessmen, local businesses, other industrialists. They could file complaints about the war damage which was inflicted by Russian invasion and destruction during this war. So there is already 85,000 complaints of war damage was filed to this commission. So how to compensate these war damages? There are two ways, as according to top EU diplomat Kaja Kallas. She thinks that one way is to use Russian frozen assets, about 300 billion euros of Russian frozen assets are in the West, mostly in Belgium. Of course, more than 200 billion euros are frozen in Belgium and other European countries, but also in some other countries as well, like America, Canada, and all over the world. And the second way of compensating Ukraine for inflicted war damages is to use Russian petrol dollars, oil revenues, using in the future Russian oil revenues to repay compensation and for Ukrainians. She mentioned the example of Iraq under Saddam Hussein when he invaded Kuwait. Then after the war, when Iraqi troops were expelled from Kuwait, Saddam Hussein paid with oil revenues for the restoration and rebuilding of Kuwait. So in this way, it could be used for Ukraine, according to Kaja Kallas. So one way is to use Russian frozen assets, and another way is to use Russian future oil revenues.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, I think that puts those frozen Russian assets in the spotlight at another level. I think that adds to the case. We'll see what they decide on at that European Council later on in the week. Let's also get, I mean, you mentioned earlier that the Ukrainians need a strong army, about the reductions that they don't necessarily want. They want to stay at a healthy level, 800,000. Let's see if that is going to happen. The defense minister of Ukraine has said that there is an immediate need for $60 billion in external funding in defense for 2026. This is something really urgent. Do you think the Europeans are going to step in there to compensate that need? Is it going to be the United States, or where do you see that coming from?
Some of it, the needs are, according to the European Commission, are something like 70 billion euros for Ukraine for the 2026, for the next year, and it's almost same amount, about 70 billion euros for the 2027, the year after next year. So that's how Ukrainian needs stands now. But according to defense officials, Ukrainian armed forces will need extra money especially for purchasing of American weaponries and ammunition for Ukraine, this NATO Pearl initiative. So there will be additional costs for Ukrainian armed forces, which need new ammunition and new arms. So that's how, but more or less, it's around 140, 150 billion euros for the next 2 years. That's how where Ukrainian needs stand. It's also it include money for Ukrainian armed forces, but also for Ukrainian state budget as a finance resources for Ukrainian state budget. Ukrainian state should function somehow. Ukrainian state should budget should be able to pay teachers, doctors, and so on and so forth. You know, the state should not collapse. So that's why this urgent need for the Western money for Ukrainian state budget as well as for the army as well.
Right. I just want to also get your view really briefly on President Zelenskyy. He's on a tour of various European capitals. Obviously now was in the Netherlands. One of the next stops is Warsaw. He'll be meeting the Polish president and Polish authorities here. How important is that visit to the alliance, and what does it mean for Polish and Ukrainian relations and all this? Just briefly.
You know, there was an uneasy moment when Poland and Ukraine could not decide who should visit whom first, whether President Karol Nawrocki should visit Kyiv or President Zelenskyy should visit Warsaw. But the very fact that President Zelenskyy will be visiting Warsaw is important, that Ukraine considers Poland as a strategic ally, as one of the main partners of Ukraine and allies in Europe generally. I think it's a good sign that there will be meeting between leaders of Ukraine and Poland.
All right. So, I mean, there's a lot. Let's see if that momentum, as we've talked about, will continue. We have that convergence. We're still unclear what Russia will do in all this, and we'll see how that goes and develops over the next few days. Look, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Rostyslav Khotin there. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sasha.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks here on TVP World. But as ever, stay right here for more news and commentary. Goodbye.